Hello, everyone. My name is Margaret Ferris, and this is the Professional Association of Resume Writers and Career Coaches and the GCC. It is my absolute pleasure to announce our speaker today and the driver behind this move, Andrew Arkley. He can introduce himself, and I will get out of the way so that he can share all the great information. Thanks, everyone, for being here, and we're looking forward to seeing more of you.
Thank you very much, Margaret. And yeah, thank you everyone who is attending today. Is absolutely delighted to be here. And I think at the end of the day, we just really want to achieve one thing today, which is to provide you some value and some help in searching for your next opportunity in the GCC. So this webinar is actually a series of many, and it's the first, which is why we're super excited. But the first one we're going to do today is finding opportunities in the GCC and your guide to the local market. So as we should with any CV or any application, everything should always be tailored. But when applying in the GCC, there's quite a few things that you want to know before making that application. And that is what today's presentation is about. It will probably take around 25, 30 minutes. If you have any questions, feel free to ask throughout. Otherwise, I've got a slide at the end and we can dedicate some time to any Q&A there. So before we get into it, let's first of all talk a little bit about PARWCC, also known as PARC internally. So PARC is a professional association of resume writers and career coaches. So who we are and what we do, we're a leading association supporting career practitioners. Our mission is to promote excellence, ethical practice, and professional development within the career support industry. And we have members worldwide. So we've got members in the UK, the UAE, the USA, and Australia. The headquarters is based in Florida. And like I said, we've got members around the globe. So services we provide or help career practitioners in resume writing, cover letter development, and LinkedIn profile optimization. We consider ourselves as a leading authority when it comes to setting standards for these documents. We also support with outplacement, so supporting organizations where staff are affected by layoffs or they need advice on career development. We also support in the realm of interview coaching and career coaching, and we're also a B2B consultancy. So often we're sort of on by organizations to support with their strategy when it comes to career development. A little bit about myself before we get into the meat of the presentation. So my name is Andrew Arkley. Along with being a director for the Professional Association of Resume Writers and Career Coaches, I'm also the founder and director of an organization or a business called PurpleCV. I am the program director for the CCVW credential. This is a credential that looks to set the standards when it comes to CV writing. I'm also a business mentor for the King's Trust in the UK. So this is a trust set up by the King that gives grants to young individuals who want to start their business, and I help those individuals and their business with anything from marketing to sales to finance. And I'm also a certified interview coach, LinkedIn coach, resume writer, and CV writer. So once again, really happy to be here today, and let's get started. So what are we going to cover? So first things first, we're going to cover market nuances. So I talked a little bit about this in the beginning, but the GCC is a very, very different market to the UK and USA by way of example. And it's those nuances and differences that we must be made aware of, because if we're not aware of them, when it comes to making an application, the chances are is that you're going to be rejected or just won't hear back. So today we're going to talk about those nuances. And hopefully you can leave this presentation today with those nuances in mind so you can improve your application. I'm going to talk about the hidden job market. So many of you may have heard of what is the hidden job market, which is many roles are not advertised, and that is very prevalent in the GCC. So with a hidden job market, we need to know the hacks, all the tips for us to approach people directly, and we'll talk more about that in a second. We're going to talk about recruiter relations. So the recruitment market in the GCC, again, very different to the USA and UK. And we'll talk about those differences today. We're also going to talk about cultural expectations. So in the GCC, lots of differences when it comes to culture, both personally and professionally. And by knowing some of these expectations and standards, again, we can just make sure that our applications hit the mark. We're going to talk about key takeaways, so just doing a quick recap. And like I said earlier, we're going to go on to a Q&A as well. So those are the main topics of today. I'm sure you can see already that hopefully you're going to get some value. But let's crack on first with market nuances. So market nuances, why standard CVs or resumes fail in the market. Now, some of these tips, to be honest with you, are quite broad in terms of they actually apply to quite a few geographies. But there are certainly some tips of the GCC as well, and we'll talk about them. So first of all, GCC recruiters expect clarity, brevity, and alignment with local norms. So what recruiters want to see is they want to see that you are in synergy and understand the local norms. And we'll talk more about those local norms in a second. Generic misses context and doesn't show a genuine interest. So similar with really any application, the last thing you want to do is make an application that comes across as generic, because when you do, it shows that you don't have passion for the role. And especially in the GCC where the competition is very high, it's important that we always demonstrate a genuine interest. And this is very, very important here because like I said, everyone and their dog right now feels like they want to move to Dubai or Saudi Arabia. So the competition is very high. And this is why when we make that application, it needs to show that we're extremely interested in that application. And we want to make the recruiter feel like that is your only application that you've made because it's the perfect fit for you. We want to highlight measurable achievements and sector-specific keywords. So this is really a tip that, again, will happen in any market, but because of the competition being so high in the GCC, it's even more prevalent, like I said. So measurable achievements, they make the recruiter or the prospective employer understand what you're going to do extra in comparison to your job role. They want to see what impact, what value you're going to bring into the organization. And this is why we also need to make sure the achievements are measurable, because measurable achievements validate and bring credibility to that impact. We want to make sure that our formatting for CVs is culturally appropriate. And we also want to make sure that the formatting, well, again, is culturally appropriate. So typically in the GCC, many recruiters will want to see a photo. This isn't mandatory, but keeping it real, 80–90% of applications will have a photo, and also location. So I'll talk about this a little bit more in the presentation after, but one thing that employers really value in the GCC is the fact that you are based in the GCC. So if you're based outside of the GCC, so let's say you're based in South Africa and you want to move to Dubai, by making it very obvious to the employer that you're depending on that role to move to Dubai, could be a turnoff. So we want to make sure that we very much consider that if we're based out of the GCC, we want to try and make it obvious or not make it obvious that we're based outside. If you are based inside the GCC, then putting your location, specifically if it's close to where the employment is going to be a massive, massive advantage for you. Because it's going to demonstrate that you already have status within the GCC and you're within commuting distance, basically. Similarly speaking, if we have a local number, we want to make sure we put that local number on the CV or on the resume, because again, it's going to demonstrate that we're probably in the region. If we're not in the region, it's just a little hack. Hopefully you can pick up that number, obviously, whilst you're abroad. But again, employers want to see ideally that you're already based in the GCC. If you're not based there, it probably means that they're going to foresee that they need to put a lot of investment, a lot of time, and a lot of variables, because obviously it involves you, moving country essentially. Next slide. And just a quick tip there. So tailor your value proposition to resonate with GCC business priorities. So similar again, it's going to be for every market that this applies, but we want to make sure that we look at that job spec, we look at the job role, we look at our CV, and we make sure the priorities of that job role is in synergy with what you're putting across in your CV. Market nuances more. We're going to talk about localizing your value proposition. So first of all, having awareness of GCC economic sectors is always a benefit. So if you didn't know, the big sectors in the GCC, very much energy, finance, tech, and government. Government, I think in Saudi, I should have brought out some stats here, but Saudi is at least 75–80% of employment is revolving around the government. So by having that awareness, we can make sure that we look at our applications and see where we want to be in terms of sectors. Employers prefer a local presence. I just emphasized this a second ago, but current market can be described as saturated when it comes to supply of talent. Over the last 5–10 years, the GCC, specifically Dubai, has gone from importing talent to actually developing and hiring local talent. And this is why employers very much now have the pick of the bunch, because the talent is already in Dubai. That initial growth, that initial spur of bringing everyone in, specifically for Dubai or the UAE, I should say, has passed. There's a lot of talent now within the UAE. So that local presence is a massive, massive advantage. Emphasize soft skills valued regionally, leadership, collaboration, loyalty. That last one specifically very important. Costs thousands of dirhams or rial to hire someone, visas, medical, everything else. Loyalty is much more valued in the GCC than it is in the Western countries of the UK and USA. If anything, in the UK now, it's pretty normal for people to, within 12 months to 24 months, it's normal to see people go from one role to another. Within the GCC, that job hopping, which it may be described as, is not particularly, well received. So loyalty is a big part of your application and something you should consider when it comes to also planning your career. Industry and cross-cultural, cross-GCC experience. As you can imagine, the GCC, specifically the UAE, is a melting pot of cultures. There's cultures here that you'd probably never come across within your home country. And we need to bear that in mind. The ability to work with other cultures is a massive, massive soft skill. And if that's a skill that you can demonstrate within your job application process, this is going to be a significant advantage. So do think about any environments, any organizations, corporations that you've worked within that values and has needed your cross-cultural ability, and emphasize that within your application, because employers will be looking for that. They want people who can hit the ground running and are used to communicating with other cultures, because this is going to be obligatory. It's going to happen as soon as you walk into that job. Working with different cultures is going to be the norm. So it's important that you're comfortable, and we demonstrate that comfortability with our prospective employer. Next slide we're going to talk about is a hidden job market, so tapping referrals. I looked around for some stats here, but yeah, generally speaking, most stats that come out is that 70–80% of GCC hires occur via referrals and networks. That is a huge percentage, and it's a percentage we need to be very mindful of when we start that job application process in the GCC. So if your focus is to focus on job boards, to focus on recruiters, you're probably picking a strategy that is only going to be 20–30% relevant. We need to look at the referrals and networks that are available within the GCC and tap into them. Start to grow your personal brand, start to grow your personal authority, and demonstrate your expertise to those referrals and networks. So some strategies just to help you engage your professional network proactively. So look at the networks that you're part of. It may be that you're only part of LinkedIn networks, for instance, but that's a great start. Look at the groups, look at the associations that you're part of, and look at them in terms of the relevance to your career going forward. If they are relevant, then start to tap into them. Start to understand the thought leaders within that network or association and start to engage with them. Even if it's as simple as commenting on their post, start to get them to warm up to your name so that you can engage with them and leverage that relationship at some point. Attend sector-specific events and networking forums. Check out apps like Meetup, Luma, and Eventbrite. So specifically within the UAE, but also it's growing in Saudi now as well. There's a lot of apps when it comes to engaging with networks and forums and also events, conferences. Check them out. If you're based within the GCC, I highly recommend you download these apps now. You can literally search by business and networking events, search on a particular day and just rock up. Many of them are free. And they're excellent. I've been to loads, and you can go along. Probably 30–40% of people that typically go to them are job seekers, but the other 50–60% are entrepreneurs. Many of them are looking for expertise, and even if they're not looking for expertise, if you can demonstrate your expertise, it might be that that entrepreneur or business owner takes a chance on you. So I highly recommend you go along to these events and networking forums. And build relationships with decision makers, not just HR. So don't just reach out to recruiters. Don't just reach out to agencies. Be bold, be brave, and go to the decision maker. If your impact and the value that you can bring is highly advantageous to that organization, any decision maker is going to give you a look in. So reach out to them directly on LinkedIn, or any other medium that you can find. And ask to meet them and demonstrate that impact and demonstrate that value very early on, to show that taking in an interest in you is going to be an advantage to them. And simple tip there, but pretty important. A warm introduction often outweighs a cold application, and this is really where your network comes in. So look at your first connections. Hopefully you're close to some connections that can introduce you, because an introduction is always going to be the best way to get a job and to get that introduction to a decision maker. So be brave, go out to your network and ask if they know if anyone's hiring. And even if they don't, ask them to introduce you to their network. The hidden market, direct outreach. We talked a little bit about this already, but identify target companies and decision makers. So look at what your career plan is, understand what industry you want to go into, and look at those decision makers within the organizations that dominate that industry. At the very least, look at the thought leaders around that industry also. Always personalize your emails and messages with a clear value proposition. Personalization here is absolutely key. If you're going to make an application and it's generic, 99.99%, you're not going to hear a response. So take those extra 5–10 minutes or 15 minutes or however long it takes to personalize your email, personalize your message, and to personalize your CV. Make sure those keywords, those phrases, those priorities on the job spec in synergy and are demonstrated within your resume or CV. LinkedIn as a tool, connect thoughtfully, avoid generic requests. So a lot of people nowadays will just quickly go and spam a load of connection requests out to their industry. This is not the way you want to do it. Make sure you do a little bit of research. If you can, try and get Sales Navigator if you can, because it allows you to do a deep dive into your industry, understand the thought leaders and decision makers, and reach out to them in a very, very efficient way. But if not, make sure you're using all of the LinkedIn tools available to reach out to those individuals. Persistence with respect. So the GCC culture values patience and relationship building. If there's one thing, I've spent a lot of time in the GCC over the last couple of years. I heard an interesting fact the other day, actually, but when it comes to B2B sales, for instance, on average, there's 7 meetings required before a decision is made. So building that relationship in the GCC, specifically with locals, is expected. So getting a decision from that first meeting, specifically if it's an informal meeting, getting a decision from that first meeting is probably not going to happen. So if you're going down that warm introduction approach, where maybe even going out for a coffee with the decision maker is needed, Don't expect that the answer is going to come out in your first meeting or even your second or even your third. It's about building that relationship so that you can leverage a relationship after rather than before. And this is very, very different to the UK and USA. People really value their time in the UK, but they value it in a way that it needs to be limited to talking about what value does it bring to the business. In the GCC, it's about what value does it bring to the individual. So make sure you build that relationship and respect that relationship also. Recruiter relations, understanding power dynamics. So GCC recruiters vary from boutique firms to large multinationals. So there's quite a lot of job boards out here, and recruiters very, very different in the GCC in terms of the recruiters are very, very, very much geared towards the employer or prospective employer to you being their client. So really important that we understand that kind of, I don't want to say bottom of the barrel, but when it comes to that relationship with the recruiter, we need to be the driver of that relationship. Because it's the employer that's the client of the recruiter, whereby in the UK especially and the USA, that they both kind of hold an equal footing. But because of that saturation, because of the oversupply of talent, it's important that we understand that dynamic and we diversify where we can. Know the hierarchy. So there's consultants, senior recruiters, and decision makers. Obviously, the latter is always going to be the best. Meeting with the decision maker and building that relationship is a relationship that's going to be most valued. Build rapport. So rapport, extremely important because of that, those facts that I mentioned there on the previous slide. So we want to make sure we respect that rapport and build it as professionally and as personally where we can. So try to get regular updates, but in a way that's not persistent or overly persistent. Make sure that we always follow up professionally. And responsiveness. If there's one thing that the GCC has taught me is that if there's an opportunity that comes your way, respond to it immediately. WhatsApp is absolutely massive in the GCC. We need to make sure that if we're giving our WhatsApp number, the chances are is that any follow-ups are going to happen over WhatsApp. So if you get any responses or any opportunities, make sure you got your WhatsApp on every alarm possible to make sure that we can respond quickly, because if we don't respond quickly, the chances are is that the opportunity will be missed. And avoid over-reliance on one recruiter. Similar to what I said earlier, in terms of we need to make sure our job application strategy is as diverse as possible. And when it comes to working with recruiters, where you can, work with as many recruiters as possible. If you can, if you work within a niche or work within a very, very specific industry, obviously try to reach out to recruiters that are within your niche. Try not to go with recruiters who do everything from warehouse staff to senior managers within retail. You want to try and reach out within your niche and work with those recruiters individually. Cultural expectations. So from Marge list to boardroom. So a couple of cultural expectations here, which are probably useful for you. Marge list culture emphasizes relationship, trust, and etiquette. I don't know if you've come across the word Marge list before. I learned it when I started coming to the GCC a couple of years ago. But this is very much about what I talked about earlier, which is building a relationship formally or professionally. Very, very much involves also intertwining the personal relationship as well. So you need to build that respect, and you build that through trust and etiquette. So specifically, if you're building that remotely, making sure we respect that small talk, making sure we take an interest where we can, obviously in a very professional way. If you're within the GCC physically, that may mean that you go out for multiple coffees. It may mean that you need to meet within an informal environment in order for that decision maker or that individual to get to know you. Build professional credibility through respect, punctuality, and awareness of hierarchy. So again, talking about the cultural expectations here, respect and trust, not to say it's not highly regarded within the West, but it's very, very prevalent here. So really important that we always show respect and we always demonstrate respect, again, through things like punctuality and also awareness of hierarchy. So whatever you do, when I talk about hierarchy, what I mean is that if you're meeting within with an individual and building that relationship and building that trust, the last thing you want to go and do is try and speed up the process, for instance, by going to their manager or their superior. That's just going to kill your chances altogether. Understand communication style. Indirect feedback is very, very common within the GCC. So if you're going through, if you're going through an introduction and go to someone, therefore, who's a decision maker, and you build that relationship, it may be that the feedback goes through the person that introduced you initially. So indirect feedback is very common. To some, they may take that as a negative, but it's just a norm. It's a cultural expectation and a cultural norm. Dressing and behavior matter, so professionally yet culturally sensitive. So obviously, if you're based in within the GCC, you should already know this. But if you're in the process of moving to the GCC, making sure we dress for culture is extremely important. And making sure also we understand, the nuances when meeting people in person. If you're meeting a female, we need to expect that female may not reach out to shake your hand. A simple bow or nod of respect is normal, specifically within Saudi Arabia. Dubai is a lot more normal to follow those Western traditions, but still we need to be very, very mindful of when we meet people in person and be mindful of how we meet them in accordance with the culture. So how many minutes have passed? I can see, trying to see how many minutes. I don't know how many minutes have passed, but some key takeaways for you guys. So once again, we need to always localize our CV and resume to reflect GCC priorities and norms. Always, where we can, leverage a hidden job market. 70 to 80% of jobs do come from referrals. That is a fact. I've seen it. So if you're hitting the job boards, if you're hitting, mass production applications, the chances are is that you're not going to get very far. So always make sure we reach out to our network, reach out to people that we know that are already based in the GCC and ask them to advocate for you. Understand recruiter dynamics to improve your candidacy. So always making sure that when we're speaking to recruiters, we understand that the niche that they operate in, and we also understand their commercial objectives, because if we can understand their objectives, we can make sure that we leverage that relationship for them to advocate for you. So get to know your recruiters directly in a very professional and a very direct manner to make sure that they work for you as well as the employer. Respect cultural nuances from informal marginalities to formal boardroom. So making sure we understand, especially when we're based here, that we understand how we meet people, how we greet people, and the fact that we need to nurture the relationship. This is really important. It can be frustrating, especially if you're coming from the West, the Western countries like the US or UK, but it is the norm here. You're not going to get a decision from the first meeting. You'd be very lucky if you do. Building a relationship is extremely important. And we also need to understand from that, you may not get a decision initially or very quickly, but what we are doing is we're building a relationship for our long-term placement within the GCC. It might be that relationship doesn't come to anything after 2 or 3 months. But when you do get a job and then you leave that job in 2 years' time, that relationship, we can then harvest in 2 or 3 years' time, reach back out to them and say, hey, I'm back on the market again for a new job. So that's hopefully some nice little tips for you there, guys. But just to wrap up before we go into the Q&A, so we do actually have another free webinar, which is called Craft a Winning CV for the GCC job market. So I have talked a little bit about CV writing today and resume writing, but that presentation or this webinar on the 26th of February, which is next week, will be very, very specific to talking about your CV. So if you've got your CV up in front of you and you're thinking it's not being as successful as I would like, good news is that we've got a completely free webinar next week in which I'll be talking about every section of that CV and how we can improve it and leverage it for the GCC job market. So that's on the 26th of February at 3 p.m. UAE time. And similar to how you've signed up today, that's on Eventbrite. So I hope that was useful. I really enjoyed it. Some really good tips there that I think should help you with your job application process. I'm conscious we've actually got a couple of people here today who are also resume writers. So I'm hoping the tips here for you today will help you as a resume writer deliver even better service for your customers. So that's everything from me. I'm just going to run over to the Q&A section and see if anyone has asked a question. I don't think we do, Margaret, unless
if you do have questions, feel free to put them in the chat.
We'll give it another 30 seconds or so. So yeah, just to recap there, guys, if you've got time now, just pop onto Eventbrite and sign up to that next session on the 26th. I believe after today also, you should get an email just to recap on your attendance today. And we'd highly encourage you to follow PARWCC if you can on LinkedIn and all of the socials that we have, because it's a fantastic organization for helping job seekers. So please do stay tuned as well. Margaret, I don't think we have any questions, so I'm going to leave it there. Oh, no, we got something. Ooh. Oh, Vincent has a question, and so does Nina. So Nina, great question. How important is it to insert a photograph today? This is a really good question. I actually did a presentation at Expo City the other day, and this came up because a lot of people within the session that I did, they were like, "Look, I really don't enjoy putting my photograph." It's not mandatory, but it is a norm. And I don't like it, to be honest with you, because I, as you can probably tell from my accent, I'm from the UK, and photographs are known to open up bias. They open bias, and as a result of that, people do not put their photograph. But the fact of the matter is that it is normal within the GCC. If you are against it and don't want to add your photo, then I would highly recommend only doing that for warm introductions. But if you are doing a cold application, then it is very normal to put your photo. In terms of the photo, we will actually talk about this more on next week's webinar. In terms of that photo, making sure it's obviously a professional one. So make sure you've got the white background, making sure you're wearing a blouse, and making sure it's professional. So whatever you do, don't go and put a photo of you having a margarita on Palm Jumeirah. Make sure it's a professional photo. Vincent, you talked about culturally appropriate formatting. Will you cover that and provide an example of a resume in the next session? Yes, absolutely. We will cover that. I didn't plan on giving an example. I'm not a big fan of templates and examples, to be honest with you, Vincent. And I'll tell you why. Is because I believe every CV and resume should be very bespoke to the individual. So I think giving a template for one person is not right for the next person. It might be that you have a career gap, and therefore we need to put your experience further down the document so that we can focus on your transferable skills. So by giving a template, it might actually give you the wrong advice. But what I will do next week is I will talk about all those different sections, and we'll also talk about the different types of CV. It might be a functional one, it might be a chronological one, and we'll talk about the different scenarios as to when we use them. But great question. Ruben, is there a specific resume format for the GCC that works, or that is different to, say, in a UK American resume? So other than the photo, what some people will recommend, Ruben, is that we also put our visa status on the CV or resume. But I'm finding, to be honest with you, a lot of people are no longer doing this. The most common thing now that is different to the UK and USA standard is the inclusion of a photo. And if anything, and specifically different to the UK, is probably a little bit more creative. So the UK CVs nowadays, very black and white, they can still look amazingly professional, whereby with the GCC, being a little bit more creative is normal. So bringing a little bit of color into it, I would highly recommend against this within the UK. But for the GCC, providing it's in a very, very professional format, bringing a bit of color is normal, along with your photo. I would highly recommend, like I said, if you don't have a local number, try if you can to get a local number. Because having that local number is going to give that impression that you're already based within the GCC, and that will be a massive advantage within your application. But great question, Vincent. Thank you. Sunny, what is the impact of Emiratization having it on expat job searches in the current UAE market? That's a really good question, and probably a topic that I should have brought up in today, but something that I will bring up in our next webinars. So for those that don't know, Emiratization is a government mandate whereby a certain percentage of individuals who are employed must be locals. So they must be a citizen. Within, I should know this, but within the UAE, I believe it's 10%, and within Saudi, I believe it's 25%. But don't correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm pretty sure that is the number. But the impact on the local market is it does have an impact on expats. So it's important that we understand this. Now, what I will say, however, is that Emiratization is very, very, very much dominated within the government sector. So when we look at Emiratization and the preferences of the locals will typically want to go for either government or finance roles. This is what they foresee as a high-paying, high-reward, very career-focused career, basically. So with that in mind, it means that all the other industries are probably you got much better chances in terms of applying to them. But the fact still remains is that Emiratization does exist. And as a result of that, it may be that some roles, I don't want to say don't exist, but are out there to demonstrate from the employer that they are trying to seek Emiratis in order to fulfill those roles. It's something that we need to be mindful of, but something that we can't really do a lot about. And this is why the hidden job market and referrals are really important, because at the end of the day, an employer wants someone who's going to deliver impact and value. And if you can get that introduction in there, it means that the consideration between hiring an Emirati or a Saudi is a lot more in your favor. Vincent or Nina, I should answer first probably. What about ATS? That's a really good question. So applicant tracking systems. These are systems used by recruiters in order to filter and parse CVs to get to a decision quickly on who is best or potentially best for that role. So when we design our CV and when we design our resume, there's two key factors we need to bear in mind in order for our CV or resume to be parsed. And that is content and format. So we need to make sure that both of them are put onto your CV and resume in a way that allows that document to be parsed by any ATS system used. So we're actually going to talk a lot about that next week, Nina. So if ATS is something that you're worried about, don't worry, we're going to talk about that next week. So we'd love to see you there. Vincent, I worked in UAE for 6 years for a US-based company, then a UAE company. What level? Also, I worked in UAE for 6 years for a US-based company, then a UAE company. What level are you talking about? Mid-level, executive, and senior executive? I don't get what your question is there, Vincent. Maybe it comes as a result of your next one. Also, can you explain growing talent internally? When I was there, it was during import of external talent. Oh, okay, yeah. So what I'm saying is there, Vincent. So a decade ago within the UAE, typically employers were a lot more open to importing talent because the talent just didn't exist because the population was so much smaller. So Dubai, for instance, I think the population now is knocking on 4 million. And 10 years ago, I don't know what the facts were, but the fact of the matter is that employers the talent wasn't there. So what they were doing is reaching out making sure that the world knew that Dubai or UAE existed and brought the talent in. But that talent is now there. It's been there for a long time, or relatively a long time, and the talent is there. So typically what employers will do now is they'll reach out to local talent before they bring in talent from outside. Doesn't mean that they're still not going to bring in talent from outside. At the end of the day, if it's expertise that are needed, they'll bring them in. But to employ someone who's already there is a lot less risk, because it means that they're already moved there. The chances are they've got the status in order to be able to start their job immediately, rather than, let's say someone lives in South Africa. It means that there's a risk there that they're going to change their mind. And it's also a risk as well. Moving to the GCC is a massive decision. And when you move there, it's a culture shock. And to many people, they'll get there and go, wait a minute, this is not the glitz and glam that I hoped for. I'm moving back home. And to an employer, employers know that it's a risk. It's a risk that the employee will just get up and say, this is not for me, I'm turning back. And imagine the investment and time that's gone into that. Nina, any tips on expanding your resume consultancy in GCC country, or will you be covering that in a separate webinar? Thank you for answering my previous two questions. You're very, very much welcome, Nina. Expanding your resume consultancy in the GCC. Okay, so Nina, I'm guessing from your question, Nina, that you possibly are a resume writing consultancy. I don't know if Margaret can clarify that. Is that right, Margaret?
Nina is a CPRW for sure.
Oh, okay, Nina, thank you very much. That's a really, really good question, Nina. Well, congratulations on considering it within the GCC. That's awesome. We may have met each other possibly at a conference. So if we have, yeah, that's really cool. Yeah, so Nina, growing it in the GCC, I think probably a little bit similar to what I've talked about today in terms of the hidden market. So traditional advertising streams in the GCC is not Google, not even possibly SEO. It's very much building it with your network. So Nina, I don't know if you specialize within one particular sector, but if you do, my first tip would be to look at that sector and look at the networking and the forums that exist within that sector within the GCC, and start to build relationships with decision makers of those forums. And quite easily, if you can get in there, it should be that they can advocate for your business within their network. So within the GCC, for those that probably or do live here, you'll know that WhatsApp groups in the GCC is massive. I can show you probably 20 WhatsApp groups on my mobile now that I'm part of, HR networking groups. These are huge. And if you can get into that network and into those WhatsApp groups, you can easily get recommendations on closed groups that you would never have access to, but you need to get access to them. And the way that you do that is by building relationships with forums, events, networks, and closed groups. And if you can do that, you'll quickly get recommended. Ruben, do you see a difference in a resume format sent for government positions v private sector in UAE? So government positions in the UAE, Ruben, from what I understand and from what I know, very much it's an application process. So the resume or CV is not as important. It's still important because in most cases you still need to attach. But the application process is something that you need to be more mindful of. But when it comes to the resume and CV, no, still go for a formal professional format. I would highly recommend you very much consider the use of colors, graphics, because government naturally are going to be looking for a very, very professional and direct format and layout, in my opinion. But the application process will be quite cumbersome and something we probably need to put as much as, if not more, emphasis on. With regards to my first question, levels of clientele, I started my company as a CPCC and ACRW in the UAE. At the end of my work with the UAE government, I saw a difference between levels of resume writing with regards to CV. Lower levels even wanted birth dates. Yeah, that kind of goes on to what I was saying earlier, Vincent. So the more that your introduction is a warm one to the recruiter, probably the more that you can keep out of the CV or the resume. I've seen CVs and resumes that have birth dates, Emirates ID numbers, you know, the visa status, when their visa expires, along with their photo, driving license, everything. You know, they're probably one bit of information away from sharing too much information. So yeah, in answer to your question, yeah, typically for the high volume applications, many people will just put as much information as they can, hoping that that information is going to give them an advantage. But in God's honest truth, I believe focusing more on the value of your content, the value of your achievements, is what's going to give you the advantage. I believe not many recruiters are going to put your CV down. They're not going to put your CV down if you don't have your date of birth. At worst, they'll see your CV and go, this is an amazing CV. It's important that I know their age for whatever reason. And what are they going to do? They're going to pick up a phone or email you. And in some way, shape, or form, many would argue that if anything, that's your CV has done the job. It's engaged with the recruiter. The recruiter's come back to you. So the CV's done its job. Key thing is making sure that the content is high value, high impact. If you're missing out that small bit of information, date of birth, visa status, that's not going to be a cause for someone not calling you back, in my professional opinion. Well, you certainly got your money's worth there, everyone. Some great questions. Thank you to Vincent, Nina, especially Ruben, Sunny. Great question there as well. Some really good questions. Thank you very much. As always, I remain open to helping anyone. If you have any questions about resumes, CVs, I'm always available. Reach out via PARWCC. Happy to help, as is Margaret there as well. Just a quick FYI. So PRWCC has launched in the GCC. I'm delighted to be a part of it. Our focus over this next 3 to 6 months is to deliver nothing but free value to listeners and attendees like you. So please do make sure you look on Eventbrite, look for those events that we'll be launching, and please do attend, because there's going to be a lot of value that we can give you, which we're very, very excited about, along with value on LinkedIn and all of our social channels as well. So I'm going to leave you in peace there before I run out of words. And yeah, been lovely to meet you all, and hopefully I'll see you next week. Margaret, shall I leave it to you to quickly wrap up?
Thank you, everyone, for being here. And thank you, Andrew, for sharing your expertise and all of your thoughts with us. Vincent, thank you for your feedback on that. We will take a look at that opportunity. And once again, everyone, thank you so much for being here and all of your great questions and leaning in. All right, everybody, take care.